Okay, so this is an overview that focuses on entering on dealing with the data that you have entered into SPSS. And in this case, we're dealing with it by creating graphs, pie charts. I'm going to be showing you how to do crosstabs as well. And we use these things in statistics, things like crosstabs and graphs and charts and tables to explore trends in the data set. So you may want to see how a particular variable is distributed, how the values of a particular variable are distributed. Do more people in my sample tend to be in older age groups or have heavier weights? Or do I have more males versus females or vice versa in my sample? They are also very useful. Things like crosstabs in this case are very useful for exploring relationships between the variables in my data set. Now, crosstabs are used mainly for exploring categorical values, relationships between categorical variables. So we need to, for example, to create a crosstab for, if we wanted to find a relationship between height and weight, we wouldn't necessarily use a crosstab. We would have to group the data before we use a crosstab. Now, what I have done is created these weight categories, which is actually a representation of the groupings of this distribution here of weight in my sample. And I'm going to find out if there is an association between weight, using the weight categories, and gender. Do females tend to be heavier than males or vice versa? Now, I'm also going to be creating graphs, and I think I'll start simply by showing you how to create a simple bar graph. And this bar graph will be of the distribution of weight categories. To do that, we go to Graphs, Chart Builder. Um, Now I'm going to, this dialog box is pretty much telling you that it is important to set the level of measurement for each of your variables. So I'm going to click OK because my measurement levels have already been set. I was working with it before, so I'm going to click reset. Okay, now this is what you will see when it is opened. And to set your to create a bar graph for weight, for your weight categories, what you can do is simply, I'm going to do a simple bar graph. Select my chart type, which is my simple bar. So I'll just bring it up here. And I'm going to put weight. And I'm going to select weight. I'm going to put it here. Drag it down to the x-axis. So it is saying that that is how my graph will look. That's the preview for it. Now, I'm going to go to, now why I'm changing this is because I don't want it to be represented as a count. For now, percentages are more useful in this case, so I can say definitively that the majority of my sample, maybe 70% of my sample, is distributed within a particular weight category. So I'm going to be using percentage. So I go to here, statistic, and I go to percentage. Note that in the element properties window, because I have clicked count, they're considering that to be bar 1, which is this here, count. So I'm setting the parameters for that bar. So I will go to, I'm pretty much right. So I've established that the parameter that I want to use there is percentage and not count, and I'm gonna click apply. Right, so it changes it to percentage. Then I'm gonna go and click OK. Now that I have selected OK, and my graph has been generated. Not as pretty as the graphs in Excel, but you still have a lot of flexibility in terms of how you may want to design this graph. Now what I'm going to do, there's one category here which is a less than or equal to 100 that was not a value that does not cover any value in our data set, that in our variable, sorry. So nobody had that. Remember that this is a representation of a recode of these variables. I'm using this to create the graph, but this is actually a recode of these variables. So nobody here was less than 100 pounds, less than or equal to 100 pounds. Now what I'm going to do in that situation is that for aesthetic purposes, it is best to exclude this category, and to exclude it, I double click the graph. anything you want to do in SPSS in the output window, if you want to edit a chart, you simply double click the chart to activate the edit window. And of course, you can explore all of these options on your own time. It's very straightforward. So I'm gonna double click that category at the bottom. You could click any of the categories to edit it. So now this dialog box comes up, and I'm going to go over to categories, and in categories I'm going to select one less than or equal to 100, and I want to exclude that category. I want to take it out, so I'm going to click exclude, and I'm going to click apply and close. And when I do that, I will have, you know, I would have excluded that. Now the other thing that I want to do is perhaps change some of the properties of these bars. Like for example, the bars are too thick. I can either double click on the bar on the columns and it will activate the properties window, or I can right click and go to properties window, and it takes me back to where I was before. When I go to properties window, I can go to bar options, and then this gives me bar width. So I might want to reduce the width of my bars to maybe 39. That's fine. All right, so the bars are a little bit nicer looking. So I might also want to change the color. Maybe I don't like that ugly beige. Is that beige? I have no idea what color that is, but that color. So now I'll change it to a nice sky blue, and I can also increase the weight of the line, that border, I can click apply. Oops, but guess what? Look at what it did. I need to go back to bar options now to readjust it. It totally collapsed the bar. So what I need to, I've changed it back, and I'm clicking apply. So that's okay. So I've played around with it, and that is my bar chart that shows the distribution of weight. Now another thing, I have weight categories as a label for my x-axis. I don't want that. It doesn't make it doesn't read well. So what I'm going to do is change this weight categories by double clicking it until you get it activated, and I'll just say that this represents weight in pounds. Right, and I think that looks a little bit better. And then when I'm finished with the editing window, I simply close it, and all the changes will be made accordingly. Now, you may also want to explore a relationship between this weight that you have, this distribution of weight here, and gender. How do we do that? To do that, the best thing to do is go to Analyze, Descriptive Statistics, and let us create a crosstab for that association. We could also do it by doing another graph. I'll show you the other graph first, by creating a comparative graph. Now I'm gonna just click OK for that, and I'm gonna reset here. Now we can do a comparative bar graph. This is a comparative bar graph. That's the type of chart I want. Now I want to see how the different genders compare as it relates to distribution of weight. So to do that, I'm going to put gender on my x-axis, so I get male and female, and my grouping variable or my cluster variable is going to be weight categories. Right now, I don't want. I might not necessarily. I'll leave it at count for now, just because I'm running out of time on this vid, and I'm gonna just click OK. So what it is showing me is that this is how my samples vary. Most of my females are actually in the lower weight categories, which is 101 to 130 pounds. They're in that category, versus men, which tend to be distributed in higher weight categories. Now, another way of expressing this relationship is by doing a crosstab, as I had mentioned earlier. Now, to do a crosstab, we go to Analyze, Descriptive Statistics, Crosstabs. Now, I've already set it up where I have put gender. Let me just send it back for you. So I've put gender. I'm going to put gender in my column and weight categories in my row. Gender being my independent variable, weight categories being my dependent variable. And I'm going to click cells, and I want the percentages for my independent variable. So I'm gonna, for the column. So I'm gonna click that and click OK. Now this is what you get from it. This is what is generated, and it is showing that in fact 82% of my females were actually in the 101 to 130 category compared to only 9.5% of males. If you look at the higher age category, if you